Memory. It's the key to our identity.
Without memory, we are nothing.
It's who we are.
But how does it actually work?
It's a huge mystery.
Today, scientists are probing our brains like never before.
We're seeing a memory being formed in front of your eyes.
Finding clues that lead us to shocking new places.
You know, your memory is not as accurate as you think it is.
We can tinker with a specific memory at will.
Perhaps Mother Nature needs a little bit of tweaking on the dials.
From editing memories
We can implant a false memory.
to deleting our worst fears.
It was unbelievable, and I was standing there like, how can this be possible? I used to be terrified of spiders.
We target and even erase the fear memory itself.
Are we approaching the day where at the flick of a switch, we can rewrite our past?
Being able to use new technologies to edit memories is frightening.
I think that it's a matter of when this happens, not a matter of if it'll happen.
Memory Hackers. Right now on Nova.
I remember.
I remember.
I remember.
I remember.
Memory. We know it as a record of our lives, how to find our keys or recite facts from school. But stop and think about it. It's so much more. From your earliest memory,
Fallen off of a horse at about 5 years old.
When I walked into kindergarten and I met my best friend.
About 1925, that we moved to 513 Spring Avenue.
your happiest,
When my daughter was born, when she, came out.
See a real-life human being breathe a first breath of fresh air.
or saddest.
But the death of my father.
We are little but the sum of our memories.
It's who we are. That's how we understand ourselves and our lives.
Consider for a moment just how vivid a memory can be.
The smells, the sounds.
I know the shoes, the socks, the pants, and the shirt I wore.
And it was like it happened yesterday.
I do have a picture in my head.
You can see it.
That is a remarkably complex computational process that memory achieved within milliseconds. What an incredible, powerful gift.
How is this gift possible? How does the world get into our heads and turn into a memory? How does memory actually work?
Wow.
Turns out that's one of the biggest mysteries in science today.
If you go and ask most people, they would say they understand memory, but the truth is really rather far from that. We sort of understand the tip of the iceberg.
We're just kind of nibbling around the big central mystery of memory. How do I bring back in time now something that happened to me long ago? It's a very difficult problem that we haven't solved.
Memory is the biggest mystery. It's as big as the question of what is the universe? Why are we here?
Could this 11-year-old boy hold one of the keys to unlocking the mystery? On first glance, Jake Hausler looks like a normal fifth grader. But as Washington University's Roddy Rodiger is discovering, he seems to be anything but.
What happened Friday, October 28th, 2011?
The World Series Game 7. Cardinals won 6-2.
Who are the pitchers for the teams?
Chris Carpenter for St. Louis. Matt Harrison for the Rangers.
We're just getting to know Jake and just starting to study him. He's obviously a very bright kid with a different kind of very powerful memory. Let's try a different day here. How about May 4th, 2013?
That was a Saturday. And I saw Iron Man 3.
He appears to have pretty unique abilities, so he can tell you what he did years ago to this date. And that's very, very unusual in and of itself, and to find it in a child is particularly unusual.
When was Osama bin Laden killed?
May 2nd, 2011, in Pakistan. May 1st, 2011. in USA.
I mean, it's amazing. I've never felt like my memory was particularly bad, but compared to Jake's, clearly it is. It's just a mystery as to what's going on here.
Jake can remember details from almost every day of his life since age 7.
Once he started speaking, really, we noticed he was different.
What are the 13 colonies?
Georgia, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maryland.
Yeah, I remember taking him to the grocery store one time and he knew where all the items were by aisle. It's a little bit like having a computer living with you.
We'd all remember getting a pet, but the exact date?
What day did I pick up Gracie in Wisconsin?
March 31st.
Where did I fly into?
Minneapolis, St. Paul.
What did I eat for dinner the night I was in Wisconsin?
Peas curds?
That is correct. There's no doubt that there's something different going on there.
What's different about Jake is that he has HSAM, highly superior autobiographical memory.
Highly superior, you can remember days from your life in lots of detail, like what day of the week was it, and you can't forget it.
What about 2004?
Jim McGaw is a pioneer in the science of memory. He discovered HSAM 15 years ago.
And when did you meet with me?
June 28, 2008.
So far, out of the several thousand tested, he's discovered 55 adults who have this amazing ability.
Saturday at Panera Bread in Newport Beach.
I can give them any date, say 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, and so on.
Do you know when Elvis Presley died?
August 16, 77.
And their performance will be at least 80% correct, and maybe 100% correct, depending upon the particular individual.
One of the best memories McGaw has ever tested belongs to someone you might recognize. Actress Mary Lou Henner from the hit show Taxi.
I knew as a very young child that I had a very unusual memory. They called me Miss Memory, Miss Univac, the memory kid, things like that.
Name calling aside, they're not geniuses. In fact, on average, they have normal IQs.
They are not superior in other forms of learning, like book learning, standard laboratory learning tasks, and so on.
I think a misconception, as you probably know, that people have, they think it's some type of autistic savant thing, that we're using some type of mathematical calculation, like in Rain Man. Yeah, definitely not Rain Man.
So what gives them this amazing ability? McGaw has scanned over a dozen HSAMs and found some intriguing hints. For example, an area in the brain associated with memory, the uncinate fasciculus, is more active in HSAMs.
There are some differences in the brain. They're statistically significant, but they have not given us a pattern such that we can say this is the neurobiological basis of HSAM. What is it about their brains that enables this ability? That's the open question.
And that's where Jake comes in.
Hey, Jake, how you doing, buddy?
Good.
He is the youngest person ever discovered with HSAM. And here at Washington University, scientists are mapping his brain with new imaging technologies.
All right, let's go ahead and get you set up.
Over the next year, they'll test his memory while doing hundreds of scans.
All right, Jake. So what happened on April 8th, 2013?
I went to the St. Louis Zoo.
When they are finished, they will have perhaps the most comprehensive picture ever of a child's brain.
We're getting loads and loads of data on him, so it's very, very exciting. I mean, if to do this in a normal person in this comprehensive a way would be really exciting, and to be able to do it on a child who has particularly unique abilities is extra special.
Then they'll compare Jake's scans to other children's to see if they can unlock the secret of what makes his memory so extraordinary.
It's a chance of a lifetime. You can't write a grant saying we're going to go look for someone like him. It's the only number finding, right?
The hope is that this little boy's brain can help answer some big questions about how our memory works.
Jake clearly is able to extract remarkable amounts of information from his brain, but we don't know if you or I have that information in us, but we just can't remember it, or if it just doesn't get encoded into our brain function in the first place.
The mystery with Jake and the other HSAMs is, do they actually keep more memories than the rest of us? Or do we all have this wealth of detail buried deep inside our brains, we just can't get at it?
If we can understand how he harnesses that to be able to generate that within ourselves, could be a very powerful tool.
There is potential there that we will learn something truly new and important about the functioning of the most complicated and interesting known structure in the universe, and that's our brain, and the most important thing it does is learn and remember.
But what exactly is a memory? Amazingly, this simple question has stumped thinkers for ages. Until the 1950s, few clues emerged. And then came a single patient who would change everything.
When I was a young researcher, learning was learning and memory was memory, and it was just, a thing, it happens. And then along came the findings of Brenda Milner and her subject, HM.
HM stands for Henry Mollison, patient zero in the study of memory. After a childhood bicycle accident, Mollison began to suffer severe epileptic seizures.
To try and quell those seizures, neurosurgeons performed an operation where they removed the parts of his brain that they thought were creating those seizures.
Much of what they removed came from a part of the brain called the hippocampus. After the surgery, his seizures were gone, but there was an alarming side effect.
From that point forward, he could no longer make any new memories. He was what we call densely amnesic.
It could only mean one thing. The hippocampus must be the part of the brain responsible for creating new long-term memories. This in itself was a breakthrough, but that was just the start.
Do you know what you did yesterday?
No, I don't.
How about this morning?
Brenda Milner wanted to know, despite his amnesia, could he still have some form of memory?
He was a very nice person. He was very cooperative. Fortunately for us, he liked doing tests. He liked puzzles.
So she came up with a puzzle to trace a star shape using only a mirror to see his hand.
If you try this, it's jolly difficult. But normal subjects, with practice, a few trials, learn to do this thing.
Because HM appeared to have zero ability to make new long-term memories, he should be hopeless. He shouldn't be able to learn anything.
How's he going to do? I didn't know, no idea.
And in fact, every time Milner asked him to train, he claimed he'd never done the task before. But his performance betrayed him. He got better and better until...
I was so excited because this was a breakthrough. He can't remember the events of his life, but he seems that he can possibly learn motor skills.
The fact that HM could remember motor skills, but not new events in his life, meant that memory couldn't be just one thing.
We had to leave behind the notion there was just one kind of memory. We now knew that there are different kinds of memory, and those different kinds of memories depend on different parts of the brain.
Knowing where memories are in the brain is one thing, but how do they get there? How does a long-term memory get written in the brain in the first place? These are the questions that have driven Nobel Prize winner Eric Kandel for over 60 years. It all started back in Vienna on his 9th birthday.
I received a marvelous little toy car that I drove with great pleasure through our small apartment.
2 days later was Kristallnacht, the infamous night of broken glass. In that violent prelude to the Holocaust, thousands of Nazi soldiers stormed the Jewish neighborhoods in Vienna.
November 9th, there was a knock on the door, and two Nazi policemen came in and said, "Pack all your things." When we came back a week later, everything of value was gone, including my little toy car. That was a very painful experience.
A painful experience that would define his life's work.
Everyone who went through the Holocaust, there are memories that you can never forget.
Kandel wanted to know, How did that experience become a memory he would carry with him for life?
That got me interested in psychology and psychoanalysis. And when I got interested in that, I said, what's the central question in psychoanalysis? It's memory, how we recall things.
But where to start? His biggest lead was Milner's early work with HM. The hippocampus is crucial for forming new memories. But how do they get there? Could there be a physical mechanism on the cellular level?
So I thought I would record from single cells in the hippocampus, and those cells would be so unique, they would speak to me of memory storage.
Within months, he was able to record the sound of hippocampal neurons firing.
Our colleagues are euphoric, but we didn't learn a darn thing about learning and memory. So I realized I needed to take a reductionist approach, and I thought I would use a simple animal with a simple nervous system, simple behavior, and try to study that.
Enter Aplyza californica, a giant sea slug with one of the simplest nervous systems in the animal kingdom.
One of the great giants in the field. Thought I was throwing my career away. In my naivete, I was confident that this would be right.
He thought if he could just isolate the cellular changes that occurred when Aplyza learned simple tasks, it would be the key to understanding our memory.
Humans have neurons. Sea slugs have neurons. They're not that different, right? Even at the level of DNA, our DNA is not so terribly different. The same fundamental kinds of changes should underlie memory.
To test his hypothesis, Candel's first step was to create a memory in the sea slug. To do that, he trained it to fear a light touch.
If you touch it in the siphon, it'll withdraw the siphon.
The siphon is the slug's water spout. When it is touched, it also withdraws its gills slightly as a protective reflex. But pair that touch
shock
with a mild shock, you get a much stronger reaction. And do it repeatedly. Now when you touch the animal's siphon again, even weeks later, without a shock, it reacts as if it got shocked. Somehow it remembers that that light touch means shock. It has formed a long-lasting memory.